Hi guys, today we're going to do an indoor guppy pond. I'm using an extra large fishbowl for this project, and this is perfect for those that want to get into the hobby or don't have a lot of space but would like to keep fish. I bought this plant from our local nursery and I thought it would look really nice as a terrestrial plant coming out the top of the goldfish bowl. As you can see, it's in use with a whole lot of nonsense because I had some shrimp that I found while I was cleaning a tank, and I just kind of put them in this bowl. So I've removed the plants, I've removed the shrimp obviously, and I'm now trying to play around with the best way to utilize this plant for this project. But I initially wanted to plant the plant in the bowl, but as you can see, it's quite a large plant and I would have had to fill at least half of it with substrate, and that was not going to work for me. I didn't want to use up so much of swim room. So I decided to park that idea for a while and decided to do a traditional setup with aquasoil. The aquasoil I'm using is from a previous project. So it's aquasoil, some gravel, and obviously some capping soil that I had used in that previous tank, and as a result everything gets mixed together when you're removing it. So I'm reusing that substrate for this project, and if I need to add root tabs, if there's not enough nutrients in the soil, then I can always just do that at a later stage. And then I had this piece of wood lying around as well from a previous tank setup, which I thought would look really nice in this bowl. And I was just kind of playing around with the best way for it to be set up in the tank, bearing in mind that I really did want a terrestrial plant growing out the top. So for now I thought, okay, let's see if this works. And I was going to cover this with Morimo moss balls. As you can see, I bought 3. The main reason I wanted the Morimo moss balls is the shrimp that was in this bowl we're going to go back in this bowl. They low grade shrimp, they're interbred. So I had the blue dream, all the colors of the Neocaridina shrimp, and they obviously interbred, and then I got the translucent colors. Some were like really black, some were like translucent with white stripes, etc. I don't really mind. And so they were in this bowl, and I thought they would really enjoy the Morimo moss balls. So that's the main reason I decided to get the moss balls. But also, if I'm being honest, this is a really, really nice way to have a nice look that looks like you've done an awesome job scaping, but minimal effort. You don't need a lot of skill. Once you've opened up the balls, you glue it onto the wood and it just looks natural. You can't go wrong with this method. The moss balls aren't very expensive, and once it's glued on, you have like almost an instantly finished product. As you can see, I turned the wood around because I realized that arch on the wood is quite nice, and the fish might swim through it, which would be fun to watch. And it also took up a little bit less room sticking up the top like that. So I was playing around with the positioning of the moss, which is important that you make sure you're happy with the positioning of anything before you glue it down. So yeah, this was me just playing around with the moss balls to try and get maximum cover. They grow very slowly because it's technically algae, I believe, and obviously I then added some water to it so it doesn't dry out while I'm busy messing about with my setup. Then mistake number 1 is I was hoping that small piece of rock was going to hold this wood down. In all honesty, I knew it wouldn't. So why I tried again, I cannot tell you. But there it is. And obviously holding it down at that end was not a smart thing to do, because the heavier end is at the other end. Ideally, I should have soaked this before starting the project, but in all honesty, I'd been procrastinating setting up this bowl for a while, and so then I just woke up this morning and thought, well, today's the day, and I quickly grabbed all the stuff I needed. So there was no pre-planning with setting up this tank, and hence I did not soak the wood beforehand. That would be better. And then I decided to add some stem plants, mainly because I knew this was going to be no tech at all. I wasn't going to add any filtration. There was going to be no lighting. All the filtration was going to come from the plants. So I needed it to, provide enough oxygen to kind of break down the ammonia and nitrites, etc. So I put in some plants that I was hoping would help with this, and stem plants grow quite quickly. And then I also added a small piece of bucephalandra that I got out of another tank that I had glued to a small piece of dragonstone, just because I thought it might look nice. In hindsight, it's lost in that tank, so it's still there, but I'm probably going to move it to a different tank just so I can enjoy it a bit more. But yeah, so, if you're going to do a setup, at least the day before is great preparation. And then I obviously was happy with the positioning of the merino balls, and I used some aquascaping glue, and I glued the moss to the wood. And then mistake number 2 happened. I wanted to cap it with some sand, and I'd forgotten to do that. So I thought, let's be lazy and try and put the sand while the stuff is still in there. And then I realized, nope, I need to remove the wood. And then I thought I could get away with not removing the plants and just keep adding the soil. But that idea was not a smart one either. So my laziness just pretty much added to the work. So wasn't a lot of plants in there, so I should have just pulled it out. But I really, at that stage, I was thinking, maybe I can get away with this. I couldn't get away with it. So as you can see, I've decided now, oops, yes, let's remove the plants. This is not going to work out so well. So I removed the plants and started again, if you can call it that. And then I just smoothen out the top layer of the soil. The soil that I'm using here was left over unused soil. Not soil, sorry, sand, capping sand. And I didn't really need to add it, to be honest with you. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have, because it got lost anyway after setup. It's just I had so little, and I thought, it might be nice. And maybe I'd be better able to see the shrimp, because like I said, they weren't, I don't know what you call them, purebred Nerocarodinas. They were, a mixed bunch, most of them translucent. So I was hoping that I would be able to see them a little bit better on a lighter substrate, and that was the reason for me adding that top layer of sand. And then you'll see I put that small rock back there. I should have, obviously at this stage, glued that rock, but no, that's not what I did. And I planted the stem cells back. I was hoping that over time, and I'll do an update as it grows in, that we will see quite nice cover at the back with the stem plants growing in quite nicely. And just so that the side view was going to be hopefully quite, pretty. At the top, you'll see I have my plant in a little plant holder, and I added some aqua soil to it because I wasn't 100% sure, even though Google said it could be grown in a fish tank, like your peace lilies and your monsteras or your pothos. I wasn't sure if it would, so I added some aqua soil in there and planted it into that little holder. And now I'm just filling up. I put a layer of paper towel down to try and minimize the displacement of the sand while I filled up the bowl. And as you can see, my mistake has come back to haunt me because the wood started lifting. So I had to glue that wood to a small piece of rock, and I glued it at the bottom. I'm not sure if you can see it, mainly because it's not that visible. So I glued it to the bottom to weight it down, and as you can see, the merino moss balls covered that piece of wood quite nicely, but the water is not very clear, and this is the next day and it's still not clear. So I ran a little skimmer just to clear up the water, and then I added some snails, some ram's horn snails that I got out of my goldfish tank to start the nitrogen cycle. And a week later, I added the guppies to this bowl, which really brought this bowl to life. But in that week, as you can see, that other plant didn't fare so well. So I swapped it out with the peace lily that's currently in here, and it was in a different tank. It's in a plant holder. There's no substrate in that little holder. It's just it just sits in the water. And I must say, I'm very happy. I hardly see the shrimp, to be honest with you. The minute they see me approaching, they kind of scatter and hide under the branches. But guppies they have like no survival instincts. So, you know, the minute they see me, they think it's feeding time. But the peace lily is looking quite pretty. I'm very happy with the way that the tank turned out. And this is completely low budget. I mean, there was really not much that I used. There's no filtration, there's no special lighting because this room gets a lot of natural light. And you know, this is something anybody can do. So if you want to get into the hobby, and you're scared to get into the hobby because you're worried about the cost, or you're worried about the what do you call it, about the filtration, the lighting, don't worry about it. You know, you can see, you can have a little indoor pond. You don't need special filtration or lighting, and it's completely low cost. You don't need a lot of things to bring this little bowl to life, and it just adds so much of joy. I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and I'd love to hear your comments if you do try it out. Guppies are a great beginner fish, so good luck and hope to hear from you soon.